Sometimes when we begin to question our faith or have doubts about our tradition, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert. When we take a step back and honestly evaluate organized religion in the 21st century, many times it doesn't make any sense. The more we cling to it and try to save it, the worse it becomes. In addition, widespread abuse, cover-ups, and victim shaming cause some of us to question whether it will ever be right again.
The Desert Sanctuary was created by Karl and Laura Forehand. It consists of a podcast, a blog, along with Karl and Laura's writing.
We're happy you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello again, and welcome to the Desert Sanctuary. I have been watching a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race, so I always want to start the podcast with hello, 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 because that's how RuPaul always comes into the workroom. Yeah, well, I might one of these days. You just never know. Anyway, I'm Laura Forehand, and I'm here with Karl Forehand, and we're about to dive into a really exciting and interesting conversation. But before we do that, as always, I'll kick it over to you and see what you have to say.
We've been, over the years, kind of been putting things out to YouTube. And when I looked the other day, there's 97 subscribers. And so I tried to promote it, and it went up to 103, and then back to 102. And so it didn't do any good. But just to let everybody know, there's lots of YouTube content out there. And a lot of it is our past leaning forward conferences, kind of pseudo courses for each one of our books, or most of them, and those kind of things. Just over the past few years, there's a lot of stuff out there that people could take advantage of, and I'd encourage you to just like it and subscribe if you want to, and so on. And it'll be out there. Also, our Patreon, we're starting to work on that a little bit more. We usually talk about the book, but I always say it's on sale, but it's not going to be on sale when this is released.
Or maybe it will be.
Or maybe. Yeah, you never know some days. So anyway, that's what I have to say. We're not here to talk about us. We're here to visit with Elizabeth. So
yeah,
Laura.
Yeah, so Elizabeth Urban is a professional psychic and natural witch. She has been intuitive all her life and has loved metaphysics and the occult since childhood. Self-taught from the age of 13, she learned all things centered around the craft, astrology, tarot, etc. She lives in coastal North Carolina with her husband and sons. Welcome to the Desert Sanctuary, Elizabeth. We're so glad that you're here, and I'm really excited about this conversation.
Just a minor disturbance here at Desert Sanctuary World Headquarters, because our dog's is trying to dig in the trash behind us. He's really intent. I think I ate some cheese sticks right before this, so he's after that wrapper.
That's right.
Now, and he's not being deterred. So anyway,
welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you guys, both of you, so much for having me on. This is exciting. This is an honor. Thank you.
Oh, you are welcome. So I know you have questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I do too. But well, you go with your questions first, and then I think my questions will.
Yeah, why don't we have Elizabeth just tell us your story in whatever detail you want to tell it, and we'll kick it off that way, and we'll build from there.
Okay. It's a really long journey that has had a lot of kind of, I think I'm going to put this on the back burner, and then we'll revisit it at a later date, or I think I'm done with this part. No, not quite. So there's a lot of back and forth here. So the order of it will probably be kind of mixed up, just to give you a fair warning. So I was born in the early 80s in the New Orleans area. And I'm telling you that because that's kind of pertinent to this whole background that I have in the craft and with spirituality and with everything. Because as you know, New Orleans is an epicenter of spirituality and culture, and just spirituality crossing several different religions and different forms of a higher being, a creator, spirituality, whatever you want to call it. It is the epicenter, basically. So I was actually born in that area. My dad's whole side of the family is from the greater New Orleans area. And my mom is actually from the Atlanta area. So when I was about 2 or 3, we decided, my parents decided they needed to be near a big international airport because they ran their own business, did a lot of travel, needed that easy access, and really wanted to be close to family. So my mom was like, let's move, to the suburbs of Atlanta. We'll be near my family and you've got access to that airport. So that's where I grew up. I grew up just outside of Atlanta in a small little suburban town. And so I grew up in the South my whole life. And my family spiritually would, I guess the best way to kind of describe them would be we never went to church. I never saw a Bible, but they considered themselves Christians. Okay. They considered themselves non-denominational Christians, and God was spoken about every once in a while. We would pray at Christmas Eve dinner and on Easter. That was about it. Mm-hmm. That was all I really knew in terms of religion, Christianity, spirituality. That was about it. It was not a household that I would describe as atheistic by any means. But it was very open-minded, very, yes, we believe in something, but it's not really a part of our lives. Mm-hmm. The only things that I really knew of church were if I would stay with grandparents on the weekend, I would go with them. So I didn't have I wasn't ever really formally introduced. I wasn't baptized. I didn't, mm-hmm. I didn't experience anything like that. I never experienced Sunday school. So it really wasn't a part of the world. And the interesting thing about that is that when you talk to other witches or other pagans, the majority of them have come out of a really, really strict Christian background, mm-hmm. or they are coming out of either a cult-like setting, mm-hmm. and that doesn't even necessarily have to be Christianity. I know some that have come from radical Islam.
Okay.
Mm. Usually it's something that is really constrictive and very, centered on control and very organized religion is what a lot of my fellow pagans and other witches are coming out of. Mm-hmm. And so when I really kind of got into this, I didn't fit in anywhere. And for a long time, that really bothered me. And because I was like, I got to fit in. Surely I got to fit in somewhere. And then finally, it took a long time. But eventually I was like, no, you don't. You really don't. I mean, why? Why fit in? There's no reason for this. If the people that are meant to be in your life are going to love you for you, mm-hmm. you don't have to fit in. So I basically just kind of grew up without religion. And somewhere, actually, let's go back a little bit. When I was really little, like I said, my parents traveled a lot mm-hmm. For work. So I was with grandmother quite a bit. And both grandfathers were kind of out of the picture. Step grandfather passed away when I was 9. So it was mostly just the female influence of my grandmothers. Mm-hmm. Both grandmothers were magical, unaware of it. Didn't quite know that they had these abilities, or if they did, it wasn't talked about. So they were also very devout evangelical Christians. But one of them could stick a bird seed in the ground and it would grow into this voluminous plant. There were just certain abilities. And then the other one had these cooking abilities that could make you feel a certain way when you ate her food. Like there were things about both of my grandmothers on both sides that were not normal. And, they could touch you and you would have like an open wound on your knee and it would go away the next day. There were just these weird little things. And my mom is this way as well, and just totally unaware of her abilities. And so I noticed this throughout my life. And I would stay at one of my grandmother's houses. And at night before I'd go to sleep, I would literally see spirits walking around the room. And as a child, I didn't know that wasn't normal. I just kind of thought that I had imaginary friends, or all kids see this. This isn't weird. Everybody goes through this. And I remember, I think I mentioned it to somebody one day. I think it might have been a teacher. And that was shut down quick.
Oh,
I did grow up in the Bible Belt and did go to school with kids that were raised in organized religion. And, some of my teachers were Sunday school teachers as well. And so this was quickly shut down. That's not okay. That's not normal. You need to pretend that's not happening. Don't talk about this again. And I was kind of made to feel like, oh, this is not okay. I need to quickly forget about this. I mean, I already was kind of ostracized. I already wore headgear, had a mouthful of braces, had the kind of glasses that were the bifocals, and I was toothpick thin. I didn't need more attention. I was already bullied just for how I looked.
Right.
So I didn't need these psychic abilities and all of this stuff, this witchy stuff. I didn't need any of that. So I quickly just this isn't happening. We're going to pretend I don't have this ability. I'm shutting it down. And for a couple of years, I did. I shut it down. I pretended it wasn't happening. I just would close my eyes and go to sleep, whatever. Age 13 hit. And I started to get really interested in astrology. And the movie The Craft came out. It was this movie in the 90s, and it was mostly fake kind of stuff like Hocus Pocus, but it was a fun movie, but it kind of reinstated this interest. And it came out right around that time. And this was also the time that AOL and internet came to be about. And that and the public library were really the only ways of getting information and research. And our public library was kind of run by the local churches, and they removed all of the books they didn't deem appropriate. And so really all I really had was AOL and dial-up. So there was not a whole lot of information. And I remember somewhere along the line, I found a book called Power of the Witch by Lori Cabot. And she's known as like the Witch of Salem. She's like one of the top witches. And I think she's like almost 90 now. Sorry, Lori, if you're listening to this. But she's known as an elder in the witches groups, and she is highly revered, highly respected. And she's written a lot of books. And I got a hold of this book actually from the library. I guess they forgot to remove it, but I don't believe in coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. And I read it, and I probably read it 3 times. I would recheck it out over and over again, and I would keep reading it. And that was the only morsel that I had. It felt like food to me. It was how I imagine the Bible is for Christians for me. And it felt like home. It felt right. And it felt like I had been here before. This felt familiar. There was a deja vu about it. And I'm only 13. And I get what little information I can get on AOL and our Galileo, just whatever I can get researching. I don't get a lot. And it's just, eventually I go to high school and I make some friends that actually grew up in witch families and pagan families. And I start to learn, okay, there's probably some hereditary stuff going on here. Look at the grandmothers, look at your mother. They may not know about it. And, and my abilities started to kind of grow from there. And then little things from childhood started to make sense. I had always loved rocks and crystals, and I loved being outside, and I loved plants and herbs and all of these things. I'm always outside, and my dad got me a rock tumbling set when I was little, and we'd open up the geodes, and I was totally into all of that. And I remember I went off to college. I was still heavily into this. I had initiated myself into the craft. I had felt like, this was natural. This is what I needed to be doing. For a long time, I studied Wicca. And that was kind of my intro into everything. And Wicca's beautiful religion. But over time, it became like a religion, and it was a little too rules heavy for me.
Sure.
And I felt like I was a little bit constrained. So it was more, I would more consider myself an eclectic witch at this point, but Wicca was definitely that beautiful door that opened everything up for me. And in college, I ended up dropping out early, getting married to somebody in the military. And it was an abusive marriage. It was a really bad marriage. And I kind of forgot all about my spirituality altogether because it was not safe for any form of spirituality with him at all, any form of it. So I kind of was agnostic for a couple of years, and I put everything kind of on the back burner for a while. And that was early 20s, and I was living in Seattle, so I was super far away from home and cut off, but not cut off, but distance-wise,
right,
their family. And so I just didn't really do anything spiritual for a while. I mean, I was an esthetician by trade and wasn't even doing this professionally, and was working a normal 9-to-5 job and didn't have any children. And things steadily got worse with that situation. And finally, I just left and got in my car and put whatever I could put in my car and went home to Georgia and then filed for divorce. And yeah, that was, I was like 26 at the time. And so that was kind of like a big turning point in my life.
right.
Yeah.
You know, starting over, picking up the pieces, and grateful that nothing really came out of that marriage except some trauma, but no children that were scarred or harmed in the process. And came home and was going through divorce, and he was making it really difficult. He was, doing crazy things from afar, and it took took a restraining order at one point. It was crazy. And he was a classic narcissist. And I ended up enrolling in something called divorce care at a local church in Georgia. It was a local Methodist church. And I went and I met pretty much everybody there was a Christian, and they just welcomed me with open arms. They were open, they were accepting, and they had all gone through a divorce or were going through a divorce. So we understood each other, and it was a group that met 2 evenings a week. And so I went, and I noticed that they had something that I wanted. They had this connection to source. And it was something that I thought that I wanted. And I didn't realize I already had it. I just put it on the back burner. But I felt like, for some reason at that point in my life, I felt like I couldn't have that anymore. I felt like I had failed. I was 26 years old. I'm going through a divorce. I have failed. I have failed at life. I can't believe I'm doing this. And I just felt completely broken. And for some reason, I saw that they seemed to really have it together. And they're like, why don't you come to a church service this weekend? And I came, and I went down the path of Christianity. And even though it never felt like home, it never felt right for me, I appreciated the fellowship. I appreciated the care and the love that I got, and how open and accepting they were of me. But I never enjoyed the Bible. I had the hardest time reading it. I had tried so hard. Because it was drilled. It was like, this is the word of God. You need to love this. You need to savor this. You need to be reading it every day. You need to be doing devotionals. You need to be journaling on this. And I did it. But I mean, I would be sitting there the whole time, just like to be quite honest, it was the most boring thing I've ever read in my life. And I couldn't stand half of what I read because I felt like it was barbaric. And, that it was just, the things in the Bible are really, we all know. I mean, those of us that have read it, we know. And I just felt like it didn't feel to me inside my heart that Creator had written it.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, whether God is male or female, whether there is a God, whether it's a goddess, a god, or if it's not male or female, spirit, whatever you want to call higher source, they did not write this.
Mm.
And I know that people are listening to this right now and they're like, you know, they're just like, oh,
Not our listening.
yeah, what's to me?
Yeah.
Well, that's literally how I felt, but I was like, I cannot tell anybody I feel this way
Mm-hmm.
because that is a sin. And I'm already a sinner. I'm getting divorced. I'm already this horrible, sinful woman. Like I felt deprived and I felt dirty and I felt,
right.
you know, and they prayed on this. This was, oh, we can really, you know. And even though I don't think it was intentional, I do think they had good hearts. And I still am friends with a lot of these church members to this day, thankfully. But it just felt, I was like, this is not the word of God. I don't care what they say. This is made up by a bunch of people to control. That was my feelings, was this is for control. And I remember telling a really close friend of mine that I trusted that I felt that way. And I was like, you can't tell anyone I feel this way because I feel really bad. I felt so much guilt about this. And they said, you're not supposed to question that. I'm like, but why? They're like, because it's just the word of God. It's the word of God. You don't question that. It just is. And I'm like, but why is this like this? And this doesn't make any sense. And this doesn't make any sense. And they're like, just because it just is. It's the Bible. It just is. Don't question it. So I didn't, but there was always in my heart and in the back of my mind, I was never on board. But I felt like in order to be saved, I felt like I had to be saved because I was getting divorced. I felt dirty. I felt like I wasn't, like once I died, I was literally going to go to hell, even though I didn't even really think I believed in hell. For some reason, all of this conditioning, that patriarchy, and you know, growing up in the South, and even though I wasn't raised that way, it
seeps in.
It seeped in. And, you know, and they were taking such good care of me. This whole church was taking such good care of me. And then eventually, you know, Ben was actually a childhood friend, my husband, and we ended up reconnecting. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we started dating and, you know, we started going to this church together. And he got into it and he was really in it. And we actually ended up getting married at this church and they married us. And this pastor really kind of took us under his wing. And eventually we got married and Ben went to seminary. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now we were really deep in it. Yeah. And horrific things happened in seminary. Things that I still have to kind of take a back step and be like, did this really happen? Oh, it really happened. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about spiritual abuse and religious abuse, and you hear these stories from people, you don't think that it's a real thing. And it really is. And I'm not going to mention seminary, but it's a well-known seminary. And academically, it's amazing. It's one of the best ones you can go to. It's great. And he ended up getting a great education there. He really did. So we were really in it. We were sold out for God. We were, even though we all know that I really wasn't, but I didn't realize I wasn't. Mm-hmm. I mean, I even got baptized along the way. It was, we ended up going to this seminary and they had these courses. The wives were not allowed to go because in this denomination, women cannot preach. Mm. Only men can become pastors. But I can take these classes as a spouse. It was called the Wives Institute. And it was classes. They taught OT, they taught NT, but they also taught you how to like fold napkins for a dinner party.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. But then they taught the serious stuff like, you know, there's a whole book on just Revelation. I mean, they taught like a whole class just on that chapter. Mm-hmm. And, they would teach things like on biblical inerrancy. There was a class on inerrancy of the Bible. And, they even told me that I was reading the wrong version of the Bible at one point. Like it was, yeah. Yeah. So I remember being in one of the classes that was actually called biblical parenting. And I was pregnant with our first child at the time during this class. I got pregnant a month after Ben started seminary.
Uh-huh.
And so I was taking this class, and they had some really good points. And it was, how to raise your child under Jesus, how to raise them in the Lord's name, how to raise them so they'll become Christians. And, a lot of it was, how to properly discipline your kids. Well, they actually took an entire hour, I kid you not, on how to properly spank your children.
Oh, I believe it.
Mm.
And that if you don't spank your kids, that you're sparing them the rod. And that it was, and I remember sitting there in that class with my mouth just hanging open because I even knew this is wrong.
Mm.
Like they were advocating abuse. It was terrible. And I don't even know how I didn't get up and leave. I was frozen to my chair.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember coming home that night and telling Ben about it. He looked at me and he was like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yes." I had notes that I had taken on everything they taught. And it was just, I'm like, look at these notes. This is everything that was said in this class. I wish I would have recorded it. Mm-hmm. And I think at that point, we kind of knew something was wrong. That was the first kind of big, really red flag to us. And this was a 4 to 5 year thing that he was in seminary. When that child was about 2 years old, I started to, quote unquote, stray. And I started to really kind of see everything for what it was. And my roots came back. Mm. I just was feeling the call so strongly to go back to my roots of witchcraft. I couldn't deny it. It was everywhere. I mean, I was starting to have dreams about it at night. And I was like, I got to put this out of my mind. This is of the devil. I have to put this out of my mind. I can't get back into this. Why am I being tempted? This is terrible. Why am I sinning like this? Mm-hmm. It just got stronger. And of course, I couldn't tell Ben about this. My only regret with all of this is that I kept this from him. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I didn't want to mess up his education. Mm-hmm. He could have gotten kicked out of school. Mm-hmm. If I couldn't tell anybody about this, I was literally in the broom closet, literally. Mm-hmm. And I had to keep this to myself, but I couldn't deny it at the same time. So it almost felt like a form of infidelity. I had this immense guilt. And no matter what I did, I kept trying to pray it away. I kept trying all of these things we were surrounded by other seminary families. So it's not like I could really talk to anybody about this. So I decided finally, I told him about it and he was not happy, but he was like, "I love you. You're my wife. I don't agree with this, but this, just please don't say anything. I don't want to get kicked out of school." He had 1 more year left at this point. Mm-hmm. And so I embraced it and I went back into my studies and it was like I picked back up where I had left off as a teenager. It was literally like no time had passed. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. But this time I was in my 30s and I could really take it seriously, but I had to I had to kind of keep it on the down low. We get pregnant with our second child, and he's only got a few months left of school at this point. And for some reason, when I got pregnant with that second baby, my psychic abilities really turned on. Mm. And going back to me seeing spirits walking around my grandmother's house at night, this was no denying it anymore. And I thought, oh, this is the pregnancy hormones. Yeah, whatever, it'll go away once I get birth. No, it was just even stronger. And that baby, coincidentally, is super talented in that area as well. Mm. It got it got to the point where I was being called into this, not only spiritually, but professionally as well. Like, this is like, they were telling me clearly, my guides, we all have spirit guides. This is what you need to be doing. You need to be helping people through spiritual advising, intuitive readings, and you need to be doing professional witchcraft, helping people with their homes, helping people, guiding people through this, doing people's natal charts. This is the kind of things that you are meant to be doing. And it was clear as day, and my abilities were only getting stronger. My attachment and my yearning for more of the craft, more of the goddess, and more of the spirituality that is traditional old world witchcraft just kept growing. And it felt like I was feeding my soul. It felt like I was coming home. Tea break. I felt myself being nourished. But at the same time, it's like the person that I'm best friends with, the love of my life, I can't share this with him. He knows about it. He's not happy. He's uncomfortable. He's scared. But it's like, there's this, it's here, and it's building this wall between us at the same time. But I also heard very clearly, you need to trust. Just trust me. It's going to be okay. I was like, okay, all right. You know, I've always been super spiritual, and I've always believed in something. But this was probably the hardest point, and I call it kind of like a dark night of the soul. And it was a lot of spiritual deconstruction coming out of Christianity when I really wasn't one. I don't think I ever really was one. But unbeknownst to me, my husband was also going through deconstruction. And he was feeling, because he had seen, there were so many things that happened throughout seminary that were giant red flags that he saw, and that we both saw, that he was really kind of like, I don't think this is right for me. I don't think I want to go into ministry, but I'm going to get my education. I'm going to make it worthwhile. I'm going to get that degree. But he was afraid to even say anything, even just to be in private, because he felt like that would derail him, or what you say you put out into the universe. And so finally, I think we were just a few weeks from graduation for him. He told me, look, you know, I really don't even think I'm a Christian anymore. And I'm really sorry for how I reacted to you. And it just hurt me more that you didn't share with me, but I know why you didn't. And I just don't think, I don't want to do this. And a part of me was overjoyed, of course, because they told me, they said, trust me, it'll be okay. Just trust us. Let him do what he needs to do. And he did. You know, deconstruction is one of those things you have to go through by yourself. It sucks, but it's one of those things you have to go through for yourself. And he was going through it, and we didn't know how we were going to tell his parents or even my parents. And we had another baby coming. We didn't know where we were going to live. We were going to move out of the town we were living in while he was going to seminary, because we made great friends there, but we didn't want to stay there long term. And we were like, okay, great. What are we going to do? And he graduated. And I'm like, well, can I come out with what I want to do and who I am? Can I come out with my business plan? And that was when I kind of started my business and everything after he graduated. But we were attending a church while he was in seminary, because it's required that you go to a church. They're kind of like your sponsor church while you're in seminary, and they kind of look out for you while you're going to seminary. And when they found out about what was going on, they made all kinds of threats. They literally sent my husband an email, not a phone call, not me an email, him an email, saying, you really need to control your wife. She has gone off the deep end. We hear she's reading tarot cards. We hear she's using sage. Is she into witchcraft? What is she doing? Why is she? These are not practices of a Christian woman. These are very unbecoming of a Christian. And we realized she's pregnant. We would like her to come in for some counseling by herself.
Oh boy.
And I was like, Oh no. And my husband was just like, he got on the phone. He's like, look, can we talk about this in person or can we talk about it right now? We're not going to do this through email. First off, this is very unprofessional of you. It's unethical. And how is this any of your business? Because it's not, but they made it their business. They said, well, it's not becoming of a future pastor's wife. And we feel like she needs spiritual discipline. And we are going to spiritually discipline you in front of the whole congregation if you don't turn back to God. So they threatened spiritual discipline on us. And this church was probably at least 1,000 members, at least. It's a pretty well-known, they've got several different branches around the area. And now they're trying to branch off around the country. They're pretty big and well-known. So I'm not going to mention them, but they said she needs to come in so we can give her some counseling. And, and finally my husband was like, why couldn't you talk to her about this? And me, why are you, and they're like, well, you're the leader of the household, and you need to basically control your wife, is what they meant. And he said, well, you know what? If I hear that you have spiritually disciplined us in front of everybody, I promise we will take legal action. And they got real quiet. He said, because this is none of your business and what you're doing is illegal. You can't be talking about people's business like this in front of everybody. And because these churches, they think that the police is like completely beneath them. I don't know what it is, but they think that they have no legal repercussions or anything. They are beyond any of that. And God will protect them, right? So he said, if we just agree to leave the church right now, quietly and peacefully, will you leave us alone? Can I get that in writing? And they're like, yes, we agree to that, but you do need to leave. You're no longer welcome here. And we said, okay, fine. We were going to move out of state anyways. But I mean, yeah. Yeah. I basically got kicked out of the church for being a witch. It was a witch trial.
Yeah. For real.
Yeah.
Now it's funny, it's comical, but at the time it was pretty scary because when it's happening to you, you know how ridiculous it is. You can logically, that this is ridiculous, but when it's really happening to you, you feel like you're going to drown. It's the strangest thing to kind of describe to people. And they also threatened to tell the seminary about it. They were threatening all these things. And my husband was like, I've got my degree. It's right here in my hands. So what are you going to do? Why are you threatening? And why do you care? We care so much about your salvation, and she's on a clear path to hell. And you are too, because you're allowing this. And by being married to her, it's spilling out over to you and to your children. And it's just, no.
Wow. I mean, it's so like, it's amazing to me, the indoctrination to an encouragement to suppress yourself, right? Because, you've had these feelings and inclinations from the time you were very, very young. That it's a part of who you are.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I was born this way. I really do.
And so it's just amazing.
They kept trying to kind of like drill this out of me.
Right.
But it's innate. And what's funny is they just pushed me closer to it. It's like it's like a bar of soap. When you hold on to a bar of soap too tightly, you lose it. I mean, you're in the shower, you got that bar of soap, hold on too tightly. It's going to fall out of your hands. It's so funny because they just pushed me further towards it and further away from Jesus. And it's just,
So much about the activity of the church is harmful. Start calling it church harm now, not church hurt, because it's more serious than just hurt. It's harm. And so much of it causes us to get small.
Mm.
And whether that's a control, trying to force your husband to be controlling so that you'll be smaller, and all of those different things that happen make us shrink down. And how could that ever be the goal? To not to be yourself, not to be who you are, and not to be who you can fully be, because they don't understand. And one thing I want to make sure we have time to do is, you described yourself as an eclectic or natural witch. What's involved in that? What is that? What do you do?
Basically, there's paganism, which is generally, the general term for paganism is any religion that's not Christianity. But when you really dive down, so even like a Buddhist could be considered a pagan, but not really. So the pagan religions center around Wicca, shamanism, Druidism, Isatru. There's Norse paganism. There is hoodoo, voodoo. There is Santeria. There is a large, it's an umbrella term for many different, so like denominations almost of paganism. And I kind of started out in Wicca because that's it's a wonderful stepping stone. And if somebody told me, look, you better pick a religion right now, you've got to, it would be Wicca.
Okay.
But I definitely consider myself a pagan. We are raising our children pagan with the idea that, the option that, hey, they can choose whatever spiritual path they want, whether or not it is a spiritual path or not. It's open, but we have chosen to raise them that way so that they have that, I don't want to call it structure because I don't like that word, but they have that almost like that safetyness, that feeling of, oh, there's these traditions that I can be raised in, but there's that open end of, if I wanted to explore Buddhism, I could. If I wanted to explore Islam, I could. There's that, they know that that's open to them. We're not going to, our love is unconditional. That's not going to change. If you want to be a Christian, if you want to be, Hindu, honey, that's great. Whatever, as long as you're a kind, ethical, loving person, that's what we care about.
Right.
But they are being raised pagan, but I consider myself more eclectic witch because there are so many different types of witchcraft out there. There is Celtic witchcraft. There is Italian witchcraft. There is African witchcraft. And eclectic is basically, and then there's like green witchcraft. There's cottage witchcraft. There is sea witchery. They work mostly with water and salt and the elements of water. I really love all of it. And eclectic allows you to basically almost create your own. So, and it's almost like you can be a little bit of sea witch, you can be a little bit green. I have a Celtic and Italian ancestry, so I can pull from that. All Wiccans are witches, but not all witches are Wiccan, if that makes sense. So, another reason why I kind of call myself an eclectic witch is because I don't consider myself Wiccan. And it kind of ties into the traditional form of witchcraft as well. So, and many witches do not practice the old world traditional form, which is I absolutely love, because I love things that are old. I love things that are, from the bare roots. Where did this really come from? I love history. So I want to know, where were the beginnings of this? I want, what was it that started all of this? That's what I want to know. Where did this come from? I don't want something that somebody made up in the 1970s and deemed it a form of spirituality, which there's nothing wrong with that. If that's somebody's jam, great. But for me, I want to know where this came from. I want to know what my great grandmother practiced. I want to know what her father practiced. And yes, men and women can be witches. I'm actually seeing a lot of it in both of my sons, especially the younger one, but both of them. And we've not inclined them towards it. They're naturally being drawn to it. So I don't know if that answers your question. I felt like I'm
doing
it.
Yeah. So when people reach out to you, what kind of spiritual guidance do you give people? And I also wanted to ask a question about spiritual guides, but anyway, answer that first question. So like when people seek you out or seek out the wisdom of a witch, like what do you offer them? What can you offer them?
With every witch you talk to, you're going to get a completely different answer.
Mm-hmm.
You are going to get, basically you're going to get a different flavor.
Okay.
Is what you're going to get. So think of us like a box of crayons.
Mm-hmm.
We're all crayons. We probably have the same kind of ethic, and there is an ethical kind of code and moral system. It's basically like the golden rule, pretty much. And we're all different colors in that crayon box. So it's like, what flavor do you want here? What color do you want here? So for me, when somebody comes to me, generally, if they say, I really want to get a reading with you, they can choose from like 30 minutes or an hour. We can go over if they want. For established clients, I can even do like a quick 15 minutes if it's like a burning question they have. So generally what I do is I'm predominantly clairaudient, which you've probably heard of clairvoyance, clear seeing, you just know things. I'm mostly clairaudient. So I actually hear things. I will get messages from them just talking to me, hearing their voice. I gather messages, and I get messages from wind. We have hurricanes here a lot, and no, I do not sleep. It's pretty bad. Music on the radio. I prefer to listen to the radio because I don't choose the song, and I get really good guidance from that. Or, I will be in a situation somewhere and I will hear a clear warning, you need to leave. Or you need to take a different route home. Don't go that way today. You know what I mean? And it's generally, that's where a lot of my guidance comes from. I also have a lot of clairsentience. So what I feel in my body, if somebody's got something going on, like they're having a lot of knee pain or something, I'm going to feel it. I'm literally my knee is going to start hurting. And I'm going to go, you're having a lot of like knee problems, right? You need to go to an ortho. I really think you need to go get checked out by an ortho. Like, I'm really feeling this is real, or a chiropractor or something. And they're like, how did you pick up on that? But things like that. I also use tarot cards and oracle cards in addition to everything that I kind of work with readings. So a lot of times it's like a mismatch of things, and it tends to kind of turn into almost like spiritual counseling in a way, almost like life coaching. I call it life coaching with woo.
I like that. Yeah.
I've had people come to me to come to their home and cleanse their house. Especially if their kids have been having a lot of nightmares. Great time for something like that. And it's a spiritual cleansing, basically. And house blessings, those generally follow a cleanse. If somebody's moving into a new home, great time. If we've got a hurricane coming, there are things that I can actually do around the house that will protect the property. It's not going to keep the hurricane from coming.
Right.
They may not lose their roof. Or they may lose a shingle or two instead of the whole thing. There are things that can be done, and also things that can be done to make you feel safe if you choose not to evacuate in your home. So I also offer that, and I also make metaphysical goods. Like, I make a lot of like bath products and spiritual sprays and the like. Mostly because I absolutely enjoy working with my hands.
It's always so interesting having these conversations, because like, even as you're talking about, doing things around the house when like a hurricane's coming, I mean, how different, I know it's different, but I'm like, the thing that is kind of funny in a way is how upset the church and Christians get. But how often when we were in Christianity did we pray a hedge of protection around something? Right. And so like, why does the Christian community get so bent out of shape? I mean, I can only assume that it's because they're not able to control that aspect. But I mean, what a beautiful gift is what I think, that you can give, peace of mind or clarity to someone through, what you do. And I don't see how that is a negative. One other question I had for you is, are we all intuitive? Would you say that we are all intuitive beings?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How do we tap into that? Especially if you're coming from a Christianity background and you've been told for so long that, not to trust yourself, right? Not to trust your ideas, not to trust your body, not to trust really any of it. And so how do we tap into our own intuition?
Yeah, what's interesting is you say that, like, in Christianity, we're taught not to trust our bodies. Our bodies are deplorable, they're depravable, they're sinful, especially if you're a woman, right?
Right.
In witchcraft, no matter what form of witchcraft you practice, bodies are like revered. And it's complete opposite. It's trust your body, trust your heart, follow your heart, trust your body, get to know your body well, nourish your body with the right foods, and listen to your body. That's just a side note that I've kind of always, found, wow, it's so amazing how complete opposite that is. Like, your body is considered sacred, and, and it's to be celebrated. But so, yes, I absolutely believe we're all intuitive. And I do believe that some of us have the certain clair senses stronger than others. So there are, I'm probably wrong here, there's like 6 or 7 different clairs. So basically 6 or 7 different ways of being psychic.
Okay.
Being intuitive and having ESP. And those are going to be stronger for each person. Like, you may be super, super clairvoyant, and the others are there. Everybody has all of these. The others are there, but they're very, here's your clairvoyance all the way up here, and your other clairs are down here and kind of like subdued, but you can develop them. So it's almost like think of it like a muscle. Like, you go to the gym and you work out, you're going to build up that muscle. Like, oh, I really want to build up my triceps, I'm going to concentrate on that. Same kind of thing. So there are intuitive exercises and lifestyle adjustments you can actually make to strengthen these. I know of a few of them. For me, for some reason, it was something about having a second child. I'd had all of these from birth, especially the seeing the spirits, which is actually mediumship. But I had the clairvoyance, the clairsentience from birth, but it was just, I was like, I want nothing to do with this. This is making me weird. I'm already weird enough. Let's, put this to the side. But that second baby, oh my goodness. And then giving birth to him, it didn't go away. It was even stronger. But there are things that people can do. And a lot of them are very controversial. Once again, because, these are not things we've been taught that this is bad. So,
right.
One of them is removing fluoride, because it blocks your pineal gland. Your pineal gland can help with your sight, with your intuition. And, I'm not a dentist, so I can't sit here and tell somebody to take fluoride. I mean, dentists everywhere are like, oh my gosh. First I said that the Bible wasn't the word of God. Now I'm telling you to cut out fluoride. I mean, really? No. Check with your dentist first.
Sure.
These are one of those things they say, make sure it's not in your drinking water. Consume things. And here's a medical thing. Can't give medical advice. Check with your doctor. But they say turmeric. Consuming that in your diet. Of course, that's in curry. Maybe eat some more curry. That kind of cleans that pineal gland. Getting that morning sunlight. I know we're all getting that advice now about the vitamin D and the morning sunshine, but actually that morning sun on your face is supposed to help enhance those intuitive abilities and getting plenty of outside time. The big problem, I think, as a society that we have, we're not outside enough.
Yeah.
And we're on electronic all the time, and we have completely lost that connection to earth.
Mm-hmm.
And when you lose that connection to earth, you lose that connection to yourself. And if you don't have that connection to yourself and to your body and to your intuition, there's no way to develop any of those clairsenses or your intuition. But yes, I absolutely believe we're born with it. That's why kids are so psychic.
Right.
Kids know things.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been conditioned to lose it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So most of our audience is coming out of Christianity and doing some kind of deconstructing. And we would call it not reconstructing, but evolving. So moving on down. So we're open to more things.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of us have fears. One of the things that happened in the final stages of our last church was people found out that we did yoga and I did some meditation.
Oh boy.
And they came in third,
right?
and you quite, why is it wrong? They Googled it real quick and found one Baptist pastor that read one book, kind of, and, told them it was dangerous. The other day, a guy who follows me was reading our book, and saw that where we talked about that in there and he said, well, I don't know much about it either, but it's dangerous. And that really struck me. I hardly know anything about it, but I know it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so how do we get some, like I said, a lot of our audience is deconstructing, and they're a little more open. They're looking, they're searching. How do we get past that fear? What can you tell us about why not to worry about exploring these areas? We just, we got some oracle cards, and last night, the current, we did past, present, and future. The present, mm-hmm. we came up with the same exact reverse card.
It was upside down. It was a shadow.
Yeah,
reading.
Shadow
mm-hmm.
reading in the middle, for us. And that was significant. I think that showed us something. But why shouldn't we? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask you in a long way? Can you put our mind at ease? Why should we not be afraid?
Or how can we not be afraid?
Yeah, how can we?
Yeah.
I think, so for me, I do understand where you're coming from, because I have dealt with anxiety pretty much my whole life. And mine's for anxiety for a different reason. But when it comes to this, think of all the times that you thought something was going to go horrifically wrong, or that something was terrible. 9 times out of 10, it wasn't, right? Mm-hmm. Most of the time, the things that we think are horrible, or that are going to turn out terrible, are going to ruin us. It never really happens. Most of the time, it never happens. So kind of keep that in mind with this. Keep that in mind that worst case scenario, if I start messing around with these oracle cards or whatever it is you're into, or if you start working with a pendulum, or if, you invite a witch into your house to sage the place, the worst thing that could happen is that you kick her out of your house because you're uncomfortable. Oh, well, okay. Cool. Or, people want to do that with their relatives at Christmas time. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, really, with certain people, and, you get rid of the oracle cards.
Yeah.
Think of it that way. You can always get rid of it. You can always remove it. I guarantee you that it's not going to happen. You're just going to get more into this. It's the whole fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it
really is ignorance, isn't it? Yeah. Most of it is ignorance.
The unknown is scary.
Yeah.
And especially if you've been taught that this is bad, this is going to harm you, this is only going to bring destruction to you and your life. I mean, what else are you supposed to think? And especially being taught that everything that they are teaching you is of pure light and of goodness and love. why would they teach you any differently? Why would they lie to you? And it's things that are not, that they don't understand, they're afraid of, so they have to make it seem like it's sinful or it's something to be afraid of. And keep in mind also, and you can ask, this is what I do too, is like, am I harming anybody? Am I harming myself?
Right.
Is this illegal?
Mm.
What are the long-term repercussions of this? That's probably where you're going to get hung up right there. And you're going to go, oh, well, you know, I'm calling in the devil. Well, there is no devil in the craft. We don't even believe in the devil. That is,
people don't realize that either, do they? Like,
no, it's a completely Christian. It's a completely Christian belief. And I just quoted a Practical Magic movie, which all witches love that movie. It's our favorite movie. But in the movie, Sandra Bullock says there is no devil in the craft, because the guy is looking at her and he says, do you guys worship the devil? And she says, no, there's no devil in the craft. And that's completely accurate. Honestly, that's the most accurate movie concerning all this. They do a couple of things that are really theatrical,
Sure.
that are not real, but the majority of that movie is a great, it's a great movie anyways. Everybody should watch it, especially, it's a chick flick, but you know, even my husband enjoyed it, so it's good. But she does say there's no devil in the craft, and that's absolutely right. So you're not going to invite
the only person that believes in the devil is the Christian church,
right? So there's no way to invite that in.
the temple of Satan, the church of Satan. Either one of them believe in a literal devil or Satan,
Right?
You know. So we got to get past all that ignorance. And I'm sorry, I interrupted you, and I interrupted Laura a little while ago. So.
No, and the other way is just to dive into it and just be brave and see what happens. It's like diving into a swimming pool, and you know that water is going to be freezing cold, but you know when you're in there after a minute, it's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is you're not hurting anybody, you're not hurting yourself, you're not doing something illegal, you're not stealing. You know, it's, you know, go for it and see what happens. And you know that if it's not for you, you've got free will. Mm-hmm. And you've got autonomy over your body. And that's another thing that if somebody's coming out of this and they're deconstructing and they've been raised in this, is autonomy over their bodies. Mm-hmm. They don't know what that's like.
Right.
And that's something that there's a whole level of religious trauma and deconstruction that goes along with people that have really been raised in it from childhood and are now adults, and that I can't speak from because I didn't really experience that. But I can tell you one of the first things that needs to be done is body empowerment and taking autonomy for your body and learning to trust yourself. And don't go by the scripture. And I don't remember where it is, but it's, you can't follow your heart. Where is it in scripture? It says that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just the heart is deceitfully wicked above all things.
Your heart is deceitful. You can't follow your heart. That is the biggest lie.
Right.
And yes, this is my opinion, but I believe it I believe it with everything that I have in me.
Listen, we hear that from all different types of people and all different coming out of all different kinds of situations. That's a common thread or a common denominator in their healing, is that they've got to, first of all, go inside and then learn to trust yourself. Yep. And we hear that. We've had 240 episodes of this show, and I don't know how many times we've heard that over and over and over and over again. This is when it started to get better, when I learned to go inside and trust me. And you and Laura are talking about intuition. I think that's true. I'm so fascinated by this. Yeah.
I also think that, you know, when you're looking into anything, you know, the intention, what is your intention? Like when we started like looking at oracle cards or even other, you know, other practices, you know, we didn't go into it with the intention of fear or looking at it as if it was something, you know, something dark for that matter. And so I think when you can, you know, explore something with an intention of what can I learn from this? You know, which is something that I think Christianity wants to take out of us, because it's, you know, if we're investigating anything else, if we're exploring anything else, then that may take us, you know, we may actually see the real truth of what Christianity has been teaching us all along. So I don't look at any of this as scary, because my intention is I want to learn as much as possible. And I have to say something, because when you were talking about your second pregnancy and how all of that came to be, you know, so much stronger. And you said that your second child leans very much towards, you know, the same ability that you had. And I'm like, you know, like, what if, like, just his being and your being, you know, like, there's like, I see some sort of beautiful, like, clashing of souls right there, you know, like where he brought this out in you because he's had it even from the time that he was in you, right? So anyway, I just thought that was such a beautiful picture of just intimacy, I guess, just this merging of souls, if you will. So
well, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
In the book, Laura talks about when she met our granddaughter, our oldest grandchild, for the first time, and when they went skin to skin, when she held her up to her, that she understood unconditional love for the first time, and felt it. And
there is just so much power, like, that is so untapped, that I think that we can get through, you know, different areas of exploration, like exactly what you're talking about. And I think, you know, I just think it can be so beautiful. It can be so healing. It can be so rich. And yeah, so this has been such an amazing conversation. No, go ahead.
One more question. Okay, so I don't know if you know Greg Locke. Do you know who Greg Locke is?
You know, that name's familiar.
He's in Tennessee. He's a nut job. Really, he's a pastor, and his first wife had some mental illness, and he demonized her, and it kind of ran her off. Then he married his secretary, but he raved in the pulpit about demons in his church and in his wife's Bible study, who he ran off. And yet now he is holding tent meetings that are highly emotional, and you know, they kind of use like a hypnotic kind of practice to control people and to get them to confess and things like that. And he is, to me, he is misusing that kind of ability or whatever to manipulate people. And I hear you saying, you know, that you're trying to do that for the best good. He's confused, and he thinks he's doing the right thing. He doesn't believe a Democrat can be a Christian either, you know, so he's obviously ignorant and misusing power.
Right.
So to me, the thing that a lot of us have been afraid of, you know, the dark power, very often happens inside the church or inside people that think they're doing the right thing, yet they're manipulating people and they're coercing them into doing whatever they want them to do. So I don't know where I was going with that. It's just, it makes me angry.
That's that misuse of power and oh my gosh, spiritual abuse. I mean, that is spiritual abuse just kind of exemplified. I mean, that is absolutely.
Elizabeth, this has been really good. I've enjoyed it. What a great story. And it's so interesting. And so I want to find out more.
Yeah. But if other people want to find out more, like, do you have a way that people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will actually send you guys my links too, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
The best way is through my website's being made, but the best way is through Facebook or my email or Instagram, and I will just send over all of those to you guys.
Perfect. We can put that in the show notes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad you were able to come on. So, I mean, it's just been I don't know, for me, it's been a really rich and beautiful conversation. And I just hope it sparks more conversations so that people will kind of come out of that feeling that this is something that we can't talk about into something that it is something we can talk about and celebrate.
Right. Yeah. And the things I have noticed just with anything in general in life is that the things that people don't talk about are the things that we really, really, really need to be talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
And that tends to go with everything. And I mean, totally another topic, but I think that was actually a gift of the pandemic. Even though it was horrible, but it's teaching us things.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Elizabeth Urban, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming on the show. We're going to get an applause meter someday.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you.
For those of you out there in the audience, I hope that you have more questions still. And I hope that we can hear those sometimes, or maybe you can get in contact with Elizabeth and direct those to her. But we thank you for joining us today. As always, be where you are, be who you are, and be at peace.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary. We hope you find who you are as you embark on your own journey.
For all of us here at the Desert Sanctuary, be who you are, be where you are, and be at peace.